What's something common from your childhood that will seem strange to future generations? Computer rooms. One room for the one desktop computer in the house that the whole family had to share. Compounded with dial-up internet, this also meant you couldn't be online if someone wanted to make a phone call. At least if your family was well off enough to have cell phones yet. Man, I'll never forget playing Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction on the family computer, and being about 5 melee attacks from killing Nightmare Diablo as a solo melee druid, only to have my mom answer a call from her sister in Arizona and me getting disconnected. Ah, the days of dial-up. Using a payphone to call home to tell them what time I'll be home. Smoking sections. My parents were cigarette smokers when I was a kid, so when we went out to dinner, we would sit in the smoking section, which sucked as a little kid, everything all hazy and smelling of stale smoke. Ugh, turns my stomach thinking about it now. One time we flew to Florida and sat in the smoking section of the plane. Blows my mind to think about it now. People could not only bring lighters and matches onto a plane freely, they could use them too. That just blows my mind that this was a thing at one point. I can't imagine that. I remember when I was a kid and smoking sections became a thing. Before that, everywhere was a smoking section. Fake cigarettes for children, made out of chocolate or bubblegum. Even to adult me, this seems strange. I remember being able to buy the ones that were bubblegum, but wrapped in paper that looked like a cigarette. And if you blew through them, it had enough powder that would blow out like smoke. The early 90s were a flawless time. There's no way that would fly today. Using inputs other than HDMI for TVs, specifically RCA and coax cables. Just last month, I had to hook something up and I asked for AV cables, and there weren't any to be found. That's when I realized that it was just hooked up with an HDMI cable. I'm not even that old. iPods, they were everywhere. And now people just use their phones for music. Or even Walkmans and Discmans. This thread is easily straight up. Without telling your age, tell us how old you are based on your childhood. Anyone on cassettes? The nostalgia train is strong. You watched the TV show at the time it was broadcast. If you miss it, it may be a rerun the following summer, or the show may go into syndication after 5 years. In a similar vein, TV shows with up to 39 episodes per season. Riding my bike for hours and getting lost on purpose so I can explore. Having to physically rewind VHS and audio tapes. Remember putting a bit of tape over the gap on the VHS so you could tape over something? Also those Corvette-shaped VHS rewinders. CDs. People will wonder why we used to fire lasers at mirrored plastic to store data. It was cheap at the time to produce them in mass, but now that we have USBs and the iCloud, they are pretty useless, except for the very specific applications. Going over to a friend's house and just ask if he can come out and play. I feel like in the future, or even now, they would just send a WhatsApp message. Me. Grammy must have her cell phone off. I'll try calling her on their house phone. My kid. The house has its own phone? Me. I mean their landline. Like, not a cell phone. The phone attached to the wall. My kid. Why would you attach a phone to the wall? You're so weird, Mama. Kids don't even know the existence of a house phone. I still have one in my house. There was a kid that came into my store today. He was around late teens, early 20s maybe, looking for a house phone. I told him where they were and he asked, "What do I need?" I just need Wi-Fi, right? Took a while to explain he needed to set up a separate service. Square School Pizza was banging. You mean that piece of cardboard with soft plastic cheese and hard plastic pepperoni cubes? OG Game Boys without a backlight. You're screwed if you didn't have the light attachment if you wanted to play at night. They'll never know the struggle of being in the car and only being able to play for 2 seconds at a time when you pass a street light. Sitting by the radio for hours, waiting for my favorite songs to come on so I can record them onto cassette tapes. A lot of times the DJ would talk over the intro, but you still pressed record because you wanted to at least get all the lyrics. We had Apple Wars. As kids, we would board up our own barn with boards and tons of nails, stockpile crab apples for weeks, use garbage can lids as shields, collect rotten eggs, and make a nasty soup of cow patties, rotten garlic, pond water, and prepare them for the parents. They would charge the barn door and we would pelt apples at each other. A friend's dad would hook up the tractor to the barn door and tear it down. While he was attaching the chain, we would pour the nasty soup on him from the hayloft. Once they took the barn, we would jump from the hayloft to our fallback point to continue the fight. My dad would zip tie us up if he caught us, shove cow poop right in our face. People broke bones, got black eyes. As we got older, the parents stopped because we were getting too big and a girl broke her collarbone jumping from the hayloft. More than just future generations would find that weird, present and past too. You guys are straight up weird, man. Floppy disks. You mean save icons? Dial-up internet. Thank goodness those times finished. Imagine having to use it nowadays. Our actual web pages will never load. Going to video rental shops or whatever they are called. We used to rent a few movies almost every Friday and watch them over the weekend. I went to a family video recently and remembered how amazing it was to just walk around and see movies and games to rent. It was nostalgic. I used to get so happy whenever we could go to Blockbuster as a kid. A conversation between myself and my son when he was about 5. Ugh, I used to watch that cartoon all the time. I hated it. Well, then why did you watch it? Because it was on before my favorite cartoon. Why didn't you just put on YouTube videos until your favorite cartoon came on? Suddenly, I felt the weight of every year I've lived pressing down on my soul. Anyway, YouTube wasn't a thing until I was 24 years old. Oh, well, maybe you should have watched the DVD instead. LOL, DVDs weren't invented until I was in high school, and we couldn't afford a DVD player until after I graduated. Kid gets blue screen of death, which wasn't a thing until I was in middle school. A lack of mobility of computer data. Even 15 years ago, you had to carry your data on a floppy disk or flash drive or whatever. And if you forgot it, you couldn't remote in and access it unless you had the infrastructure to set up. Now you can log into Dropbox, Google Docs, or O365 and get it done easily. Actually having to wait to see the latest shows, and having to sit down at a specific time to see if it was live, or watch later on a VHS recording. Fads lasting more than a few months. Fads could last a lot longer when I was a kid because people didn't get burnt out on them via the internet. Waiting 2 weeks for a package in the mail. 3 to 5 days is the norm now. The idea of waiting longer than a few days will be completely alien in a few years thanks to companies like Amazon, who essentially rewrote the logistics playbook. Hey, if you're feeling nostalgic about shipping times, just order off of Wish or AliExpress or something. Honestly, I forget I bought things and then they show up weeks later. It's like bad Christmas. Cursive handwriting. I don't think kids are learning it anymore. I really enjoy writing in cursive though, and I think it helps me learn more effectively when I handwrite notes. While I don't think kids should be forced to learn it, I would like to see it offered as an elective for those who want to keep penmanship alive. Physically rolling car windows up and down. Also, I remember when I was 5-ish, my dad used to send me into the Oaken keg to get his beer while he smoked a cigarette outside. I don't think that kind of stuff flies anymore. This was the early 90s. Light Bright. Hours of fun when I was a kid. Until you spilled a container of pieces. That's why my parents kept mine at my grandma's house with her ancient short carpet. Ours was long carpet that you could lose stuff in easy. But that ancient old grandma carpet reveals every drop toy ever, so your parents could yell at you and point at every tiny toy you forgot to put away. The floppy disk icon to indicate saving. The silhouette of a telephone receiver to indicate a breakdown SOS phone. spending hours or days at a library trying to research a particular fact, smacking the side of a television or other electronic device to make it work correctly, paying for a web browser so that you had a piece of software with which you could access the World Wide Web, flip phones, floppy disk, cassette tapes, rewinding things, those little radios that played 60-second clips of songs, weird opaque plastic footwear, shaggy shorts, pencil-thin eyebrows, plastic furniture, the inflatable kind. I can go on and on. Sega, the first Nintendo, N64, Game Boy, waiting for the next Harry Potter book to be released. Throwing metal spears with fins way up into the air to try to land them in a circle on the ground. Bicycling without safety gear. Putting the whole Little League team into the bed of a pickup to drive to McDonald's in the next town after the game. Going to a friend's house, knocking on the door, asking their parents if they could come out to play, then playing outside in the neighborhood all day long without any supervision or contact with your parents. My kids do all of that, except I poke my nose outside, check from windows. They don't notice how often I do or don't check on them. Looking back on my childhood, I think I didn't notice the small checks my parents made either. This reminded me to check, that they were twisting a swing around. Classic. Writing a letter to a friend who's moved away, mailing it, waiting 2 days for it to get to them, then waiting days or weeks for their letter back to you. Taking photos with your camera, taking the film to be developed at the store, then getting the photos back a few days later. Actually standing in line at a concert venue for the tickets to go on sale so you can get front row seats or any seats. Having whole experiences or friends you have no photos of because you didn't have a camera. The film didn't process. I have no pictures of the guy I lived with at university because I didn't have a camera at the time. The roller coaster of emotions when your crush called you, but the only phone she could call you on was your family's landline, and your mom or dad answered the phone before you could get to it. And now they're asking your crush too many questions, and they won't just hand you the phone. Similar, waiting for a family member to get off the phone so you could get on the internet. Just talking on the phone for hours to crushes or friends. Does anyone talk on the phone for pleasure outside of work anymore? 151 Pokemon. I remembered when we only had 151 Pokemons, and their designs were really unique. Some based on actual living animals, not like the actual ones that are not near the creativity they used to have. Remember how creative they were? There was the brown bird that evolved into a brown bird that then became a brown bird. Then there was a brown bird that became a brown bird. Then there was the brown bird holding a stick. There was the rat that became a bigger rat, and the Pokeball that became a bigger Pokeball. There was also the super wacky ones like the magnet that became 3 magnets. Maximum creativity.